from TESOL is AI, artificial intelligence. And what I did here is took my takeaways, but then I'm going to show you how I've been applying it in our Wake Tech classes. So you can see some actual examples of how I've been using AI based off what I learned at TESOL in my classes. I teach level 5 online and in person, but all of these can be adapted for any level, and you'll see some of that in the examples that I will share with you. All right, so some warnings and disclaimers first with AI. First of all, AI chatbots can make mistakes and will make mistakes, and they will absolutely provide false information. I know that sounds pretty harsh. It's still well worth using. It's just we have to make sure that we read carefully what AI gives us and adjust accordingly and teach our students to do the same. Also, AI is changing every minute. And I'm sure there's things that you're using that I'm not using because you might be on a newer version of an AI chatbot than I am. So please know that the information here is probably going to need to be updated soon. But we got some good principles to get you started for those of you that are starting fresh or maybe just getting started. And hopefully those of you that have been using AI, feel free to add comments to the chat. If you see something that you've been doing or you have a variation on it, feel free to put that in the chat as well. Here are our goals for today's presentation. We may not get to all of these because I just have about 25 minutes. We are going to be focusing most on this first one, which is utilize AI to create tailored instruction and make your life easier and hopefully save you some time. Does that sound great? Yep. All right. I love it. Most of what you'll see today comes from ChatGPT, which most of us have heard of, and Twee. In the chat, can you just put a quick yes or no? Have you used Twee? Can you just put into the chat just a quick yes or no? Have you used Twee before? All right. Okay. Good. Okay, so we definitely have some people that have. So those of you feel free to add information into the chat when we get to that section. And a lot of you haven't, and you're gonna love it. And I know tomorrow's presentation too, we'll talk a little bit about Twee as well, and definitely encourage you to do that. It is an AI bot, but especially for teachers like us, which is fantastic. All right, so let's talk about how I'm using AI in my class right now, every day. I'm going to start with some grammar exercises and explanations. All right, here's that reading part I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to ask my co-teacher, Ms. Zoya, my co-teacher. Ms. Zoya, could you please read that prompt for us, please, where it says you are an ESL teacher?
Absolutely, Amen. Sure, with pleasure. You are an ESL teacher. Your students are beginning level ESL. Write 5 sentences in the simple present with an era with the verb for. Contextualize the sentences to working in a restaurant.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Zoya. So what I love about this is we get to contextualize, right? So for example, if you just so happen to be working on restaurant that week and you need some extra practice with simple present, you've already used the exercises in the book. You've used the all things grammar exercises, but those aren't necessarily contextualized to the unit. You can easily ask AI to do that for you. And we get within the time it takes you to type that, you get these 5 amazing examples of sentences that each have an error in the simple present. And what I typically do is I'll copy these into a Word doc. It can be made into a handout. You can put it into your PowerPoint as a warm-up. If you teach online, you can pop it into the chat and then put them off into breakout rooms to discuss. You can put that into a class kick very easily. So it's one of those things where maybe you just have a few minutes and you need a little extra to focus on a grammar point, that's one way to do it. And it's contextualized to your lesson that you're teaching. Now, writing the correct prompt is key. And I underlined a few things here in orange for you that Zoya was kind enough to read. And it's really important to talk to AI like it's your teaching assistant. It's your TA. We can pretend we're university professors and we have TAs. This is your TA. And that's why I put, you are an ESL teacher. Tell AI what their job is. Be specific, right? Beginning level ESL, 5 sentences, simple present, error with the verb form. Okay. And then adjust. You may not get the prompt correct on the first time. You may need to adjust it. For example, this is what Zoya had read for us. That was our results. I may think, okay, well, I'm teaching a level 2-3. For those level 3 students, I want these sentences to be maybe a little longer. So I can tell AI chatbot, I can adjust and say, hey, make those sentences a little longer and add in a compound subject. And now it gave me some additional sentences that are a little bit longer, and so I'm adding a little bit extra rigor for the students. So for those of us that teach multi-levels, and we all teach multi-level, obviously, but especially those that are teaching those true 2-3, 3-4 combos, that could be really helpful to you. All right, grammar charts. Another reason why I love using AI. I love charts. I think they're visually appealing to students. I have another prompt to read, please. Carol, would you mind reading that prompt for us where it says, let's create?
Sure. Let's create a chart for beginning ESL students that shows the difference between simple present and present continuous. Contextualize examples to shopping at the grocery store.
So again, we can look at the whatever unit that we're teaching that week, okay? And within the time it took me to type that, I get this wonderful chart that again, I can put this into the chat. This is great for a student that maybe was absent yesterday. If you have a test tomorrow, this is something you can share with the students. This is for lower levels. Here's another example for just a little bit higher level, simple past versus present perfect. And again, you can contextualize the example sentences to something that you're working on that week. Another way that I'm using it that I really appreciate is when students ask you really difficult grammar questions, which we all get, or even easier ones, but you just don't have the time in class, especially if you're teaching online because there's so many things happening. This is the other day, a student asked me about discussion, and we had just talked about it the day before, and the student was absent. So I decided to just really quickly go into ChatGPT and type up this prompt right here and get a chart for this student so they can see the difference between discuss and discussion. You can see I put here, provide a simple, easy to understand explanations. I also wanted them to put it into a table so that I could easily put it into the chat or email to the student. And we've been talking a lot about parts of speech, so I wanted to make sure that that was included because it was something we have been talking a lot about in class. So now not only am I answering the student's question, which you could do, and then in addition, as follow-up, I can put this into the chat for students to look at later or send it out to as an email to our seated students, or I can even pop this into a PowerPoint and use it as an opportunity to teach, right? Here was another question that came up from students, right? Just wanting to know the difference between interview, interviewee, interviewer. And again, just telling ChatGPT, make it simple and easy to understand for our students. And again, it's a nice little visual that the students can look at on their phones and study. All right, model paragraphs and rubrics. This is another way that I've been using ChatGPT. I do need to ask somebody to please help me read again. Holly, would you mind reading that for me, please?
Raymond, you are an ESL teacher of adult learners. Your students are CEFR-B2. Type a paragraph of 6 to 9 sentences about teamwork that follows structure of topic sentence, supporting details, and concluding sentence. Include 3 complex sentences with different subordinators.
Great, thank you, Holly. So I did put the CEFRB2, which are the Common European Framework, because when I was at TESOL, several people suggested, instead of saying high beginning, low intermediate, high intermediate, to use that framework, and it matches up very well with ours. You can Google those. But that's why I did that. So this is like this is a high intermediate, would be our equivalent. So I've been trying different versions of it. I've been trying to put in high intermediate ESL. I've been trying to put in the European framework just to see if I get something that's a little bit better. So this is for my level 5 class. And when I hit enter, I get this beautiful paragraph about teamwork. Of course, check it to make sure everything looks great, so that your students have a model paragraph to analyze. But I also asked ChatGPT to bold those 3 complex sentences for me. And then I put this into a slide for my morning class, my night class. I put it into a handout. And I said, students, read this paragraph and discuss what do those bolded sentences have in common. So this was a way for us to introduce complex sentences. What is different about those bolded sentences as compared to the other ones, and what do they have that's in common as well? And it's good critical thinking. It made the students really think about it, to look at those subordinators like when and although and even though, look to see how those sentences were a little bit longer. So again, just another way to save some time, because how many of us have taken 45 minutes to write a model paragraph and make sure there's no mistakes, and then being able to turn it into an assignment that can really spark some good critical thinking. On a lower level, this is a CEFRA2. Again, a model paragraph asking for that basic structure of that academic paragraph, right? The hamburger style paragraph, different topic, right? Working as a cashier. But what's amazing here, and a big time saver, is this right here, adding a grading rubric. And all I did was put in, please make a grading rubric. And it gave me this. Now, of course, you're going to want to adjust this accordingly, but to be able to have something to start with, because grading rubrics can take so long to develop, to have something to start with is amazing. And that way students know your expectations, you save that time. This can very easily be turned into a self-editing checklist as well. So big way to save some time there. All right, lastly, reading and listening comprehension. All right, so recently I'm doing a lot with teamwork and leadership. I had a list of vocabulary. I needed a vocabulary test based on a reading that we had done already on leadership and teamwork. You can see the words there are listed. All right. And if I can have, let's see here. Edith, could you read that prompt for me, please, where it says you are?
Sure. You are an ESL for intermediate level students. Make fill-in-the-blank sentences using the below words. Use a teamwork or leadership theme in the workplace. Keep it at 5th grade reading level.
Again, I'm just trying different things with reading levels, because as you know, putting in ESL intermediate may not match up with what other people think ESL intermediate is. So I was just trying some different things, as I encourage you to as well to do that. So again, within the time it took me to type and the time it took Edith to read that, I get 10 sentences ready to go with fill in the blanks. Of course, please check. But again, think about the time that you can save and be able to get this to the students so quickly, especially if you see an area that they are struggling with, and to be able to get them something so quickly. All right, so let's talk about TWE. So TWE, specifically made for teachers. It is AI bot, chatbot. It's easy to use. And if you have never used AI, this is your entry point, right? This is your entry point. So many different things you can use. You can see over here on the left side, right? All of our speaking skills and grammar skills and all those big four that we use as ESL teachers are there. And very common exercises that we always use, you'll see here. So I'm only going to scratch the surface here with TWE, but I definitely encourage you to check it out. And all of these have free versions that within limits, of course. TWE does have certain limits of how much you can use it, as does ChatGPT and other AI bots, but you do have free versions available. All right, so TWE can make a reading passage for you. So for example, in Standout, I use Standout 4, great article on credit cards, but I wanted a test on credit cards, but I needed something different. So I needed a reading test. So I used the vocabulary in class. I put in our topic, credit cards. I put in some of the vocabulary that we've been learning in class and asked for it to produce a reading passage for me. As you can see, it did over here on the right side. And you can adjust the level. As you can see here, this does use those common European framework, right? B2, you see here at the bottom. You can also take an existing passage you have. This was a passage I recently did on the self-checkout machines for tipping, where you have to tip somebody to buy a bottle of water and it asks you to tip them $1. And great topic for students. They have a lot to say about this. This was from Breaking English, but I needed to make it a little easier for my students. So I was able to take this existing text, put it into TWE, and you can ask to simplify it or upgrade it. So it'll make it easier or more difficult for your students. And then you can ask it for comprehension questions, and they're usually pretty spot on. I think those of you that use TWE, I'd imagine many of you would agree. If not, please say so in the chat. But they're pretty decent comprehension questions. You also have discussion questions as well. And one of my favorite uses is any video you can take. I had this video from Breaking English on the self-checkout tipping machines. I put it into TWE and asked it to come up with questions for me. So that was phenomenal for me to be able to get that so quickly and have those questions ready to go. And again, you can do so by levels, as you can see here. Many more things you can do with TWE, but in the time that we have, I'm going to have to pause there for now, but many more things you can do with TWE. So very quickly, there's 6 practices here. Please chat 1 in the chat, just chat the number that you think you can implement this week, Thursday, Friday, maybe Monday. We got number 1, sentence error correction. Number 2, model paragraph. Number 3, writing rubric. Number 4, fill in the blank. 5, discussion questions from video. And 6, create a reading from target vocabulary. Just put the number. That way you have a little bit of a goal this week to incorporate. Fantastic. Oh, Ingrid, I love it. She's like, I'm doing 4 of those. All right. Overachiever, I love it. All right, a lot of model paragraphs. Okay, love it. Fantastic. All right, I only have about 8 minutes left. So I'm gonna have to, this next part is actually the shorter part of my presentation, so our timing is good. I do want to show you one way that I have been having my students use AI, ChatGPT specifically. Disclaimer, this is with level 5 students, so we were able to have a conversation about ethics and how to use it ethically and honestly and the pros and the cons. But one thing that I learned at TESOL is to kind of look at the AI bot, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you're using, as your personal learning tutor, just like we have the ILC, just like you would have take your paragraph to a writing tutor and say, here, give me feedback. That's a very similar approach. Earlier, I said treat it like your TA. Students can treat it like it's their tutor. So for example, I had students write in this into the ChatGPT, their version. I am an ESL student, CEFR B1, or, high intermediate, low intermediate. Check my sentence. Now, this is something we did together. Level 5 students, hopefully they know the mistake here, but I wanted to make it simple so they could see how to use it. So I gave them this prompt and the sentence just so they can test it themselves. And then we did this, I shared my screen, we did it on my computer as well, on my screen, and we got this response. So AI will show them, hey, this is your mistake, and gives an explanation. Now, earlier I said to you, one of the things about prompts are key. You may need to adjust and revise. Same thing with students, right? You may need to have students tell the students, you might need to ask for a greater explanation. Like explain the grammar more, give me more of a definition of what I'm looking at. So they talked a little bit here about subject-verb agreement. Maybe this is too long. And I've told my students, if it's too long, if it's too difficult to understand, tell it to make it simpler so that I can understand it, right? So I can really understand my mistake. So make that simpler for us. So this is just one short little way I've been using it. There's so much more I do want to use with it, but I'm trying to still work out academic honesty and the ethical implications of it, and really trying to put some thought into that. But this is one easy way I thought to get students moving on it, because our students are taking elective classes and they've been telling me that their classmates are using ChatGPT to complete assignments. So we need to make sure our students are prepared for that as well. Some other TESOL takeaways. Teachers are using ChatGPT with their students so students can brainstorm ideas. They're using it to have check paragraphs for sentence structure, paragraph cohesion, tone. I'm not doing these yet, but these are some things that other schools are doing. All right, lastly, in my few minutes I have left, start the discussion with your students on ethically using AI. So just some guidelines that I've been using. I've adapted some of these from what I learned at TESOL. But to tell the students, yes, it's okay if you write the sentence and then ask the AI bot to check it. And I show them how to do that. Do not ask AI to write the sentence, right? That's cheating, just for making it simple for students. Yes, you can write a paragraph and then ask AI to check one aspect, such as your topic sentence or your examples. No, do not ask AI to write a paragraph and turn it in. That's cheating. Just trying to make it simple for the students. And whatever you do, students, please make sure the information is correct, because we know AI can make mistakes. Do not believe everything AI tells you to do. More to come on this. Again, like I said, mostly using AI for my teaching purposes, but definitely transitioning to teaching the students how to use it more. All right, a few other takeaways from TESOL. I'm creating a code of conduct for your class. Ongoing discussion, AI is always changing. Every time you do a new assignment, you need to readdress the policy. And most schools are only using it for a very specific part of the writing process, right? Not for the whole writing process, maybe just one aspect of it.